Non-Indian people often think of American Indians as people of the past or of far-off reservations. However, according to the most recent U.S. Census figures, 60,000 American Indians live in Missouri. The state of Kansas and Arkansas have similar percentages of American Indians in their populations. Some of the largest American Indian populations in Missouri are found in and around Springfield, Joplin, Kansas City, and St. Louis. However, American Indians are scattered throughout the state in urban, small towns, and rural settings. Whether you are aware of it or not, you probably have American Indian people living in your neighborhood. The Mid-American Indian Fellowship is a model and mentor for other similar American Indian spiritual groups or networks across the country. We also work together with the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship and Warm Embrace to bring assistance to Indian people living in impoverished areas of South Dakota. When I read this information for the first time, it was very evident to me that I had a lot to learn about my own heritage. You see, my great-grandmother was a native, but because of bigotry, prejudice, and fear, this is what happened. Her husband died young, very young. Her children were taken away from her because everyone thought no Indian woman could raise those children. My grandmother was taken and cared for by some other family. The family told no one outside the family about this heritage because it was bad enough being Irish. I am indebted to Robert Francis for helping me to understand some of my own heritage, something my family could not do. My theology tells me that our fellowship could be a branch on the vine of God's redemptive work, just as Dover Place Christian Church. Robert.
That's a Cherokee greeting, by the way. I wish you balance in your life, balance that the Creator gives. And I've asked you if you're at peace. And if you are at peace this morning, you may respond, "Osta." Or if you're really, really feeling imbalanced and peaceful this morning, the more emphatic, "Ostadu."
Ostadu.
We got a lot of good peaceful people. That's great. It is good to be here. I have known Linda and John probably for about 10 years now. They've connected with Mid-American Indian Fellowships. I think maybe first through coming to our gathering over in Lynn County, Kansas, and also then connecting up with, they've connected with the Bowes Creek Indian Fellowship and now with Eagle River Indian Fellowship, which meets just down the road in Festus and part of the time in St. Genevieve, Missouri. And so, you know, Linda told you a little bit about who we are. I'll share a little bit about who I am. I am Chickamauga Cherokee. I am what do they call me? Consultant and helper for Mid-American Indian Fellowships, which is a network of American Indian spiritual groups in Missouri and Kansas and Arkansas. I'm also a member of two traditional Chickamauga medicine societies. I am the firekeeper for the Doxy grounds, which is a traditional Chickamauga practice grounds where the sacred fire of the Cherokees is kept. That's about enough right now. I'll talk a little bit more later I have here with me today Bud Mellinger, who's also a Mid-American Indian Fellowship's helper. He helps with the Avaz Creek Indian Fellowship, which meets at Herman part of the time, Herman, Missouri, where Bud lives. And sometimes it meets over near Avaz, Missouri, or Hatton, Missouri, over in that area toward Columbia. Bud and his wife, Dr. Sherry Mellinger, also head up what we call compassionate veterinary care. And they go out to the Cheyenne River Sioux Indian Reservation usually a couple of times a year and help with the horses out there and the dogs and the cats. And then they also have vet clinics out in Bates County, Missouri, way on the other side of the state where I live, and the Doxy grounds. And they have, they also usually host a clinic each year down at the Morning Star grounds in Ozark County, Missouri, South Central Missouri. And so if you're interested in compassionate veterinary care and what that's all about, talk to Bud after the service. He's an interesting fellow to talk about. When I was a 4-year-old child, I had a recurrent dream. Actually, at the time, I thought of it more as a nightmare than a dream. But in this dream, my father and I, hand in hand, were being chased by cannibals. And these cannibals just happened to be an upstanding, very respected white family from our church, from the church where our family went and were members. And we were being chased by these cannibals through a big city department store late at night. We went up escalators, stalled escalators, weren't running. And we went up to the highest level in the department store. And we were cornered at that top level. And there we were with our back to a railing. And behind the railing was darkness. And a drop of no telling how many feet to the concrete floor below. And the cannibals were coming to devour us. And my daddy turned us around and we leaped over the railing in the darkness. And that's how the dream would always end. And I would scream, "Mommy!" And I never told my mom about that dream all my growing up years, but it stuck with me, stayed with me. So helped me to watch for cannibals sometimes. Sometimes in places where other people wouldn't notice, or be watchful, such as department stores. Church. I am a Chickamauga Cherokee, and I didn't come from Oklahoma or North Carolina. I was actually born in a little town some of you might be familiar with called St. Louis, Missouri. Heard of that? I was born here in St. Louis and lived with my family in St. Charles, which is across the Missouri River. For the first 7 years of my life. Then we moved back to southeast Missouri where my parents had moved from. And we moved there and I was raised on a little farm just outside of a town called Advance, Missouri. And that's how you pronounce it, Advance, not Advance. So I grew up in Missouri, a place to which many of our Chickamauga Cherokee ancestors came prior to the infamous Trail of Tears or the forced removal. Many of our Chickamauga ancestors came to Missouri and Arkansas. In fact, a bigger part of the Chickamauga Cherokees wound up in Missouri and Arkansas, although there are Chickamaugas scattered everywhere. And if you don't know, if that word is unfamiliar to you, you've probably heard about Cherokees, they used to call the Cherokees one of the civilized tribes. And they would refer to the Cherokees, the civilized Cherokees, but in the old days, the same people who were calling the Cherokees civilized, they would also turn around and speak of the bloodthirsty Chickamaugas. Okay? So you got one of the bloodthirsty Chickamaugas here today. The Chickamaugas, there was a split in the Cherokee Nation in 1775 over the issue of basically compliance versus drawing a line and saying, this side's ours, stay on the other side of the line. And so the Chickamauga has kept the resistance going, a resistance to American white expansionism, kept that going for 20 years after the Revolutionary War. During the Revolutionary War, but also another 20 years. Then, but that movement kind of shifted its center to the Miamia people in the north and to the Shawnee people in the north. The Chickamaugas continued in that resistance, and in some ways we're still continuing in that resistance, as you might gather, but maybe not violently as in the past, but the resistance continues to crop up. But I grew up in Missouri, a place that to this day pretty much denies its Indian population, or is in denial about its Indian population for the most part, but a place in which, you know, probably about 60,000 people consider themselves Indian. Missouri, for 100 years, it was illegal to be Indian in Missouri. If you weren't killed outright, you lost whatever land you laid claim to and were removed to Oklahoma if it was found out that you were Cherokee. And any white folks who had helped you, they would lose their land too if that was found out. So those were some pretty strict laws, and so people tried not to talk about being Indian or having any kind of Indian affiliation at all during those times. And even today, most Chickamauga people in Missouri and even in Arkansas are a bit reticent about being straightforward with who they are if they identify themselves as Indian. Oftentimes, although it's changed considerably in my lifetime, it's changed. But you know, I didn't grow up speaking Cherokee. I didn't grow up going to any ceremonies except those of the General Baptist churches to which our family belonged. Altar calls, baptism, communion, foot washing. Those were the formal ceremonies of the General Baptist churches. And yet, I was raised up to value oral tradition. There are many, many stories. And a lot of those stories just went back maybe 2 to 4 generations. They were family stories. But, you know, I remember maybe a couple stories that linked us back to a time before our world was torn apart. I was raised to pay close attention to significant dreams and visions, to hold those in my heart. I was taught that all things that are made by Creator have life and have personhood and have awareness. And I was taught the relatedness of all things and the value of respect for all that is. Those are the kinds of values that I was brought up with, and those are indigenous values. And I was raised with the land, with that connection with the land. We had a lot of crops. We had some crops that we sold, like strawberries and watermelons and this and that. But by and large, our farm was a subsistence farm. We grew what we ate and we ate what we raised. Okay, and so we lived with the land. And that in and of itself is a heart of being indigenous, is that connectedness with the land. And so we may have lost an awful lot, but we never lost that connection. I remember going to Bible school and coming back from Bible school and saying to my mom, the teacher said animals don't have souls. And my mom said, well, you know better than that. I said, yeah, I do. And she said, well, don't argue with them. They'll never listen. I remember holding watermelons with my daddy and hearing him comment that even the little grass plants cry out when we have to cut them off from their roots. I remember being with my grandma and hearing her say, with a far off look in her eyes, in the old days, a hunter told the deer he was sorry. At age 14, I went to church camp for the first time, and I was so excited because church camp was out. It was in the St. Francis Range of the Ozarks in Wayne County, Missouri. And it was a beautiful area, and I was going to get to go out there, and there were woods. I mean, I love to go to the woods, and we were a mile from the nearest woods, and I'd have to walk a mile to go. And I went there all the time, but that was a long ways. And at church camp, I thought, the woods are just right there, and I could just go into the woods every day. And so I went to church camp, and the first thing they told us, don't go in the woods. Snakes in the woods. Don't go in the woods. Well, I was in the woods every day. The others were playing softball, playing volleyball, and I go out in the woods. I find me a quiet place and just sit and I listen, to the songs of the birds and the motion of the wind and the leaves. And it was easier for me to hear the voice of the Creator there than it was down in the noisy church camp down the road. I could hear their noise from where I was up there on the hill anyway. And so, I would go out there, and nobody ever was the wiser. And it was there when I was 14 that it was impressed on me, spiritually impressed on me, that I was at a time in my life when I needed to go and find a quiet place like that, up on top of a hill, up on top of a mountain, to just be there and to fast and to pray for a few days. They're exposed to the heavens and the earth. And I thought, how am I going to do that? If I talk to my mom and dad about that, they're not going to understand that. What I didn't understand was that this was something that the Chickamauga young men of a few generations before would have always done at about the age of 14. But, here I was being led in that direction, but I was saying, I don't know how to do that. And so Creator, being resourceful, as Creator always is, led me in on a different tack. Same direction, but in a different tack. And so by the age of 15, I had what I could only describe or only interpret as a spiritual calling to ministry. And, it just confused me to no end, because I never had even really liked going to church or felt comfortable in church during the candle strings. And so I didn't tell anybody. I just started reading the Bible more, studied the Bible, and I became more and more involved, though, in church. But I didn't tell anybody that the Creator was calling me into ministry. Okay, so summer of 1983, I met a young woman named Janet Tucker. We'd been pen pals. She lived in Ohio. She was of Native ancestry too. But she lived in Ohio and I lived in Missouri. And after we'd written to each other a few months, she took initiative. She came to see me. And, when she did leave, then I felt like my heart had been torn in half. And, I had to go see her. And so, we wound up, okay, here I was, at that time, I was a 24-year-old college dropout, okay, working without salary on my parents' farm. Also, very active in church. I was, let's see, what was I? I guess I was the music director at that time. I used to sing in English a lot. I don't do that much anymore. And I was also a Sunday school teacher. And I had been the youth director. I think I gave that up. That was a little bit much. But anyway, I was a trustee in the church as well. All those things. And I was 24 years old, but without a paying job. But, by the summer of '85, Janet and I had been married for over a year. We were living in Ohio. We were taking care of her parents' sheep, living in what we called the little house. So we had to kind of run the sheep out of that, and scrape the floors and put plastic up on the windows and everything else. But we were in the little house, and living there, it's in Ohio, Appalachian, Ohio. You've seen the pictures of Appalachia, the lower part of Appalachia. Well, yeah, okay. I've been there and done that, and it was fine. And I also worked some in the oil fields out there and some in construction, and we were getting by. And by the summer of '85, Janet and I had been married for over a year, and we had a baby on the way. And one night, just before bedtime, well, just at bedtime, I've been called into the ministry, and it was time for me to make that public. And Janet cried all night long. So, that began my tenure as a Baptist minister. We were in a Southern Baptist church at that time. And I made my call public, and I'm going to skip ahead now. During my years as a Baptist minister, there were 13 of those years. But during my years as a Baptist minister, I vacillated a lot spiritually between this really strong urge to follow native spirituality, Cherokee spirituality, and also a troubling in my conscience that somehow that did not correspond with the Bible, and somehow I was betraying something by following those leanings. And so I was troubled much of the time. I was guilty for this and guilty for that, you know. And so something happened in December 1992. I was pastoring a church in southeast Missouri called Perkins Baptist Church. And as we were planning our Christmas Eve service, a young man said, "Hey, I've got an idea. Here's what we can do. Let's get a big box and let's wrap it up, put a big bow on top. And then on Christmas Eve, when people come, we'll hand out little slips of paper. And when they come up to take the Lord's Supper, before they do that, we were going to serve it up in the front. Everybody's going to come up and file up to the front. And as they come up, let them write down things that they want to get rid of out of their lives. Any perceived sins, anything that they just want to get rid of. Write down on a slip of paper. Come up, and before you partake, put the slip in the box. That'll be our gift